And just like that, we're underway. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Agent Power Huddle, and specifically welcome to Scripting Fridays, which is my specialty. And let's dive right in, shall we? Today, we're going to be talking about sellers and getting them off the sideline, basically. If I can get it to start. This is the time of year when sellers are debating and trying to figure out what they want to do. And I think we all could probably do a better job of helping facilitate that thought process. So that's what we're going to talk about today. If you're new here, my name's Ed Laine. I don't know if you can tell by my background, I live and work in Seattle, and I'm in my 39th year in the industry, but I've sold over 3,000 homes. I've also closed over 5,000 mortgages. So I have a breadth of experience that's pretty large. And that's what qualifies me to opine on such matters. But today we're going to focus on seller motivation discovery, because that's sort of I always describe it like this. When you know a consumer's why, it's a button that you can push when they start to balk or hesitate or they're unsure or whatever. You can remind them of, well, remember why we're doing this. So you can be closer to your grandchildren, or so you can whatever, right? We want to get better and deeper information than just the surface information, right? So I'm going to give you some scripting and some questions that will help you get inside the head of your prospect, soon to become a client, and help them. All of this just puts us in a better position to be a better servant to these clients, right? So what's actually happening in today's market? Well, we're seeing longer DOM, right? Buyers are extremely price sensitive. They're hesitating because of rates, which to me makes no sense anymore. We can talk a little bit about that later. Um, and sellers are just uncertain. They they know they need to move, they need to upsize or downsize, but they're not sure if they're going to be able to or how they're going to do it. They might even have a 3% interest rate, so they're not even sure if they want to do it. There's all kinds of reasons to be uncertain, right? And they're more likely to want to test the market or at least watch it, right? During a stronger market, the weak survive, right? When your phone was ringing every other minute in 2020 and 2021, you didn't have to have great skills. In a market like this, the professionals are the ones that are going to succeed. I did a mastermind earlier this week, and one of the points I made is in a shifting market, market share shifts, and it's either shifting away from you or towards you. And it's up to you to decide which way it's going to go, right? So weaker skills are going to go by the wayside. If you continue to train and get better, that's why you're watching this video, right? That's going to help you get better at this and win more, period. All right. The hard truth. Oh, someone's knocking. Sorry. I should just leave that open. All right. Now my thing's not working. 62% of sellers said they would not use their agent due to poor communication. And remember, poor communication isn't just about weekly updates, although I think a lot of agents fail at that too. It's about failing to understand what truly matters. And that happens at the beginning. That's why this training is going to be so useful, because you're going to have better questions to ask in order to get at the deeper motivations that sellers have that they aren't sharing right out of the gates, right? If we don't uncover the urgency, the consequences, the financial impact, and the emotional drivers. You're not leading, you're reacting, right? So how do we do that? Well, we're going to be better than average, number one, right? We don't want to just say, why are you selling? How many agents say that? Like all of them, right? A better question is, what if this move doesn't happen? That gets after the consequences, right? That's what helps create clarity, and clarity creates confidence. Vagueness creates cancellations, right? If you don't have a deep rapport and a deep relationship with your seller, you're more likely to get fired, plain and simple, right? And if you're like me, I actually give my sellers a cancellation agreement on day one. That makes it easier to get them to sign the actual listing agreement, but it also puts me at greater risk of being fired, right? Here's the good news. Knock wood, but I've yet to be fired. And that's because I have clarity and I get in rapport. So what's the 5-layer motivation framework? Well, the first layer is where most agents operate, right? The surface reason. The next layer is timeline anchoring. Then commitment collaboration, consequence questions, and financial impact questions. So let's dive into each of those, right? Seller, we're thinking about upsizing. What's prompting the move right now? I'm timeline anchoring, right? What's prompting the move right now? Why now instead of next year? And what's changed that's prompting this? Way better than why are you moving, right? Always follow up. So we want to stop saying, when are you thinking of moving, and shift to saying, if everything went perfectly, when would you be in your next home? Help them visualize the outcome. Picture yourself on the beach. When would that be, right? And what happens if it doesn't happen by then? Well, we won't be able to get our kids into school or whatever, right? Is there a deadline tied to school, work, or family? These are all questions that will help you anchor them to a time frame of success and help you figure out what is the immovable, right? Commitment, collaboration. On a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to making this move? And why not a lower number? I like that question because it's sort of the opposite of where people normally go, right? What is it that is preventing that seller from changing their mind away from selling? Well, it's not a lower number because my kid's graduating or my job is changing or whatever, right? And what would make it a 10? Well, if we found the perfect house or if we got the right number for our house. What's holding you back? If they're not committed, that's the worst listing. I've had those. You probably have too, right? When they're apathetic, they're not motivated. That means they're not going to price it correctly. I actually have a dialogue that I use in those circumstances because you can flush that out on day one when you're meeting with them. And it's simply, why not stay? If you sense that somebody is not super committed, hey, why not stay? And that'll get them to reinvest in the reason, right? Well, we really need to get down to Florida. My daughter's pregnant or whatever, right? If they don't have a motivation, I'll pass on the listing. Or I'll say, I'd rather disappoint you today than disappoint you 120 days from now. Why do you think I say 120 and not 30? I want them to visualize suffering and languishing on the market, right? I'd rather disappoint you today than disappoint you 120 days from now. That's a great dialogue for the seller who's trying to get 900 when their house is only worth 850, or trying to get 400 when their house is only worth 350. I'd rather disappoint you today than disappoint you 120 days from now. The consequence question. So describe for me what happens if the home doesn't sell. What are the consequences of that? All right, then shut up. Because silence will reveal the financial pressure they're under, or the emotional urgency, or the fear. It'll reveal the true motivation. So tell me, what happens if the house doesn't sell? Well, then I'm effed, right? Motivation is revealed by consequences, not dreams. Right? You're either drawn towards something or pushed away from something. And then the last layer is the financial impact questions. What would sitting on the market cost you on a monthly basis? What's your mortgage payment? What's your tax liability, right? If you had to reduce $25,000 6 months from now, how would that impact you? 6 months is another not accidental time frame, right? Because what it'll cause somebody to do is go, maybe we should reduce 25,000 now. Like, let's go on the market 25,000 lower. I don't want to have to wait 6 months to do that, right? If rates rise again, how does that affect your buying power? Like, at a fundamental level, we as brokers and those that we educate understand the current market. We don't know what's coming, even experts, right? Now, some of us are better at reading the tea leaves and predicting what the next market looks like. But at its core, the consumer probably doesn't even understand the current market, right? That's why they say, how's the market? But you can educate them. The point I'm making is we should build a plan to take advantage of the current market because we understand it. That doesn't mean overpricing the house so that it takes 180 days to sell and now we're in a different market, right? Plan for the market that you know and discuss the cost of inaction, not just the list price. I had this conversation yesterday with a seller for a price reduction. That's part of the game, right? Do we both wish it would have already sold? Absolutely. But here in Seattle, the condo market is just getting crushed. I have one condo that's 170 days on the market and another one that's closing today that was 130 days on the market before it got an offer. So condos are tough. And that just evidence that I know the market, right? So if I'm meeting with a seller that has a condo, I'm going to preach patience because it's going to take a while, right? Sorry for the tangent, but that's a great illustration of what I'm talking about. So the qualification standard is before you list it, you want to ask them, if the market suggests a price adjustment, are you open to that? If we get an offer within 3% of asking, would you seriously consider it? You might even want to say 5 or more, right? Buyers are aggressive in this market. I have an agent on my team. Listing's been on the market for 7 days. Buyer asked for a $35,000 price reduction. combination of price and credit. That's aggressive for 1 week on the market, right? They didn't get the house either because he got multiple offers and the smarter buyer paid full price. And his lowball offer made the full price guy look even stronger, right? What would stop you from selling once we're live? Or is there anything that would stop you from selling? Right? We don't want to take listings. We want to take listings that will sell, period. So what are some red flags to watch for? People that say, I want to test the water. That's why I hate Compass's whole strategy. They're encouraging testing the water. Let's just try it out. Let's see what happens, right? We're not in a rush. These are all signals of apathy. Let's just see what happens. Throw it out there. Let's try it out. See what happens, right? We don't have to move. We, we'd like to, but we don't have to. Again, apathy, indifference, right? Curiosity does not pay commission, right? So if somebody's just dipping their toes in the water, they're wasting your time and money. Use the I'd rather disappoint you today than disappoint you 120 days from now. Or just say, I'm not the broker for you. I said that, right? The communication tie-in is critical, right? If we don't uncover the true motivation, price reductions are going to feel like you pressuring them. Feedback from other brokers is going to feel like criticism. Days on market is going to create tension, and their trust in you is going to fade. When they're super motivated, it makes pricing strategy simpler. And by the way, call it that. Let's have a list price strategy session. And people will say to me, what do you mean? And I'll say, well, the market value of your home and the list price are rarely the same number. And that's because we're trying to pick a list price that maximizes what it ultimately sells for. All right? Weak motivation makes everything a fight. The last question is, are you in the listing business or the problem-solving business? If you don't uncover the real reason they're moving, you'll spend the entire listing defending your marketing instead of guiding decisions. That is way more fun, being a guide, right? So you got to ask deeper questions and listen. Get them to talk, right? Qualify before you commit. All right. I've been doing all the talking. I always try and leave a few minutes at the end here. Quick plug. If you have a Chat GPT account, go to whatwouldEdSay.com. It's a custom GPT and it'll tell you what to say in any circumstance, literally. Like it's pretty awesome. I don't mind saying, selfishly. Allison, you have your hand up.
It is pretty awesome. I do have a question.
Thank you. Yes.
So I have a listing appointment tomorrow. I'm actually going to call them today and ask them a bunch of questions because I was at an event when they called me yesterday. And they bought the house out. It was the family house. They bought it out after one of the parents died from all the siblings. And
Okay.
too large for them. And it's got what she said was a very high mortgage. And she would like to sell. Ideal situation would be to sell it and buy a smaller house with a smaller mortgage, which she doesn't think is possible to do in California. She doesn't want to move back to North Carolina though. And so how would do you have any thoughts on how to handle that listing appointment?
Yeah. That's a great question for today's content, right? Because it's all about the why.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, their biggest anxiety, and this is probably the case for her, is where is she going to land?
Right.
right? And people have a very difficult time. I often, when I'm talking to a consumer, I'll often describe it as like lily pads, right? You're jumping from one to the next. Well, if the next lily pad isn't even known, that's going to terrify them. So, um, I know this might not be ideal in your mind because it adds time to the process, but sometimes when you have really deep-rooted anxiety, it helps to say, one of the things we could do, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is we can start looking to see how difficult is it going to be to find what you're looking for. And if we find it's abundant, then no problem. Let's get this thing on the market. If maybe it's not so common and what you want is more of a unicorn, then we can start writing contingent offers until we find the one. The choice is yours. I'm not here about pressure. I'm here about solutions, right?
And there's one more thing. I'm the first one she called because I was at the top of Google. Yay!
Nice.
Right. And she does want to talk to two more agents, and there's some staging issues that I can handle because I'm a certified stager. She goes, I know I think I made you anxious. And I said, you did not make me anxious. I've seen it all. And
That's an interesting comment. What
right.
made her say that, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah.
so um, how I was thinking about working my way backwards, like finding out how much she owes so that we know what they can afford and talking to a lender. Uh,
Mhm.
what's your best advice to make me stand out over the other two, other than my sparkling personality?
Yes. So the first thing I would do is say, great, you were going to interview a total of three of us, or do you expect more?
I think
No, just
two or
just
three.
you and two others.
I-
I'd like to meet with you last. I always go last because I want to remove the objection of, well, I love you and want to hire you, but I also agreed to meet with Susie from Century 21 on Saturday, right? So I go last, and then when I say this to people, I follow it up with this sentence. Can you do me one favor? Just commit to not sign anything with those other two until we get a chance to meet, because I'm going to do a lot of work in preparation for our meeting. And then after we meet, you can hire anybody. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, please don't hire somebody before we meet. Otherwise, it'll have been a waste of time. If you get them to say yes to that, they're statistically way more likely to not sign, even if they run into a strong closer, right?
Mhm.
So, and I have friends, and we just do it differently, but I have friends that want to go first and close hard. But if I talk to that prospect before they meet with them and I use those words and get them to say yes, because the key is they have to feel a sense of obligation because they said yes, he's not going to get the deal anyway, right?
Mhm.
Um, that alone makes you stand out. I'm not done talking, and we're going to do more, but just by virtue of that, she's never talked to an agent about whether they like to go first or last. So for you to specify this already makes you stand out as somebody that's got experience and has a process, right? Then, and you can watch my listing presentation video is on the Agent Collective website. And I'm not saying use my slide deck, although you're certainly welcome to. I'm saying follow the process because the process sounds like this. I'll give you the short version. When I pull up to a house, first thing I do is turn off the radio in my car. You might be wondering, why the hell do you do that? Because when I finish, I'm going to get back in my car and not be distracted so I can debrief what happened, how to go, what did I do wrong, what could I have said better. I have a notepad in my armrest that I whip out and I just start jamming, right? So I pull up, turn my radio off, go up to the front door, ring the doorbell. When they answer the door, the first thing I say is, are you ready to get your home sold? I don't say hi. I say, are you ready to get your home sold? And it's a little bit of puts them on their heels. But the beauty of that sentence is it gets them to say maybe what their objections are going to be
Oh.
later, right? Like if they say, well, it depends on what you're going to charge me or what you're going to say it's worth or whatever. No problem. Let's let's sit down, right? Then I go in, I set my laptop bag down next to the kitchen table or next to the living room coffee table. And I deliver like I do this very scientifically. I pick the chair that I'm going to sit in so I don't risk sitting next to the wife and offending because in some cultures that's wildly offensive, right?
Mhm.
So I'm very careful about where I set my laptop bag. And then I turn around and say, do you mind giving me a tour of the home? And they'll say, sure. And I'll say, do you mind also if I take photos? These are not marketing photos. They're not going to get on the internet, nothing like that. It's just for my memory so that I can make recommendations of for both staging and repairs or whatever. And they go, yeah, that's fine. Some of them will balk a little bit. Oh gosh, I wish I had known I would have cleaned or whatever. And I reassure them, don't worry about it. These aren't going anywhere and they're not for marketing purposes. It's just to help me remember how many bedrooms you had, etc. Right? And I go, okay. The key about the tour is bonding and building rapport. So as you're getting the tour, look for photos of activities or trips or anything that you can go, oh my God, you've been to Paris? I'm so jealous. Or I have too. We have that in common, right? Like try and find things that you have in common. Your kids played sports? Oh my God, so do mine. Whatever.
Mhm.
Bond and build rapport as you're going around it. And if there's nothing that you have in common, just be complimentary, right? That's a fundamental human trait. We like people that say nice things about us and our place where we live, right? So
Mhm.
bond and build rapport. Then I get back to the table and I always start with three questions. I'll pull out my laptop, but I'll pull out a notepad too. And I'll say, these are the three questions. So tell me, what are the top three things that you need to do in order to get your home on the market? And they'll be like, they'll either say, pick an agent, or they'll say, we got to fix the rain gutter and do this and do that, right? Great. Take notes. What are your top three goals for this transaction? Well, we're hoping to get $1 million, whatever, right? Usually there's a financial, there's a timing, and then there's an other. And those are all opportunities for you to convey, like one of the things I say a lot, especially in a contingent sale, is I'm an expert in managing a contingent and simultaneous closing with a non-simultaneous possession date so that you have time to move. And they're like, I've never even heard the word non-simultaneous, right? But then they're like, ooh, I didn't even think of that. Okay, great, right? And then the last thing I ask is, give me the top three things or what do you expect from the real estate community? And most of the time people are like, what the hell does that question mean? Right. And I'll go, well, like with buyers agents coming through your home, what do you expect from them? And I ask that question deliberately because I want to flush out if they've had a bad experience.
Mm.
Right.
Oh, someone left my door unlocked and we were gone all day.
Exactly. Or they let my cat out or whatever. Right. If they don't have a bad experience like that, they'll just say, I expect them to bring me a big fat offer. And I'm like, got it. That's all. But if they had a bad experience, I want to let them know that I've got systems and mechanisms to make sure those things don't happen, whatever it is, right? Like somebody let my cat out. I'm going to put notes in the listing. I'm going to put feature cards in the house. Nobody's going to let, Felix out. Then I go to my marketing material, my slide deck. So I'll kind of stop there because you hopefully have a slide deck, and I will comment to each of you. If you don't use a slide deck, get one. And you can go to theagentcollective.com and download mine and change the logos. I don't care. But if all you do is show up with a DMA like this, you're decreasing your likelihood of success, right? And my slide deck ends with a slide that's just a list of everything I just covered. And I ask two questions at the end, and then I'll shut up. First question is, hey, Allison, I covered a lot today. Did anything stand out to you? And it's while you're looking at a slide that has every program that I bring, right? And most common question I get is, man, you just think of everything. Your program is so comprehensive. That's a word I hear a lot, right? And then I ask the closing question. Based on what I've shown you, am I the right guy to help you get your home sold? And if they say anything other than yes, I'm buckling in for objection handling. There's a video on my YouTube channel if you guys want to check it out, and it's got 8 discounting objection handlers. So practice those.
At that point, if they said, we don't know, is that when you say, what can I do to earn your business?
Um, they don't usually say we don't know. They'll have a specific reason. Because I'm not joking, my listing presentation is compelling. And you guys should watch it and take parts of it that you like and chuck the rest or whatever. But I get an answer. If it's other than no, it's usually I have someone else to interview. Even though I said, how many agents are you going to interview when I scheduled the appointment? I qualified going last, but sometimes between when I booked it and when we meet, they found somebody else. And that's okay. It's my goal is to not, have that happen. But if it happens, I just two-step it. I'll just say, and I should preface this by pointing out to you guys, I have the CMA in my laptop bag, but I haven't mentioned it yet. And it's for this exact reason, because if they say, your system is great, we definitely are interested in hiring you, but we have committed to interview one more agent that we didn't realize when we agreed to meet with you. I've had people say that, right? And I'll say, hey, that's okay. When are you meeting with them? Tomorrow. Okay. I've Now that I've seen your home, I can do a proper market analysis for you. So why don't we reconvene after you've met with them, and then you can let me know who you want to hire. So I'm just separating the CMA. And one thing I'll end with this. None of you should share your CMA number with any seller until they've hired you, because that's your most valuable asset, right? The 6 inches between your ears. And if you just go around telling people your house is worth 600, yours is worth 550, yours is worth 900, they're just going to say thank you, and they're going to ask 10 more brokers, and they're going to hire the person that gives them the highest number. And we all know that's not a great strategy, but that's what's going to happen.
That would be an interesting question to put into what would Ed say, why not to hire the person who gives you the highest number?
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you what it should say since it's me,
Okay.
right? If you ask 10, if you're a seller and you ask 10 agents for a number and you pick the guy who said the highest, you got the one that has the worst skills, right? It's like, do you remember the movie Tommy Boy? And how he got in sales and he would go in and he'd say okie dokie to everything. And you don't want to be that guy or gal, right? You want to list homes to sell, not just list them, like the slide said. So uh, if you hire the guy who says the highest number, now you're going to come on the market too high. It's going to be stale. You're going to have to do a price reduction. The whole time you're getting offers lower than your asking price, and it's a slippery slope down. And I can't really do it on Zoom, but I'll actually do physical, and I'll say, and you're not going to sell until you do a big enough price reduction to intersect that line.
Mm.
And when you're showing using your hands, when you say intersect that line, they make sense to them, right? And they go, "Oh
And you
God,
also said last week, you said something about don't you price out you when you overprice um you reduce your visibility by 50% at least. Didn't you?
yeah." That's one of the slides in my slide deck.
Okay.
It's like a pyramid, and it says market value is X. You're going to get about 60% of the eyeballs, but if you go to market value plus 10%, it drops to 30. So that's where that number comes from.
Okay.
And that's the rest of that dialogue is, so what we want to do is find that perfect balance of the highest price, but the biggest pool of buyers or the most eyeballs that we can.
Mhm. Awesome.
All right.
Autumn for putting that in the chat.
Yes. Thank you, Autumn.
Quick, yeah, quick question.
Yeah, Sam.
You talk so nicely, cool-headed, everything. So with this one, but when we talk to the sellers, we have the anxiety. We tend to make mistakes or use stammering,
Yeah.
not the smooth flow. How should we gain that experience?
Great question, Sam. And I'm only calm, cool, and collected because I'm really old and I've been doing it a long time. Here's a shortcut for you though. Role playing. Like settle into what your listing presentation is going to look like and what words you're going to use and practice with somebody. It can be somebody like the best role playing is when you're role playing. Like if I role play with Allison and she knows the same script that I'm trying to use, that's harder, right? Because I know if I mess it up, she's going to recognize it. The pucker factor goes up. But if you're a solo agent, you don't have a team, you can do it with your spouse or a good friend if you want. You're just not going to get it as quickly because they're not going to be able to say, hey, you messed that up, right? But practice. Role playing is the best practice. And what you'll find is as you get it down, then you can escalate the practice to, okay, now, Allison, I want you to throw more objections at me. I want to practice those, right? Because normally you're just practicing the smooth sailing version until
Yeah,
you get good at it. And then you want to start getting some curveballs.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Sam. Any other questions? We ran a few minutes long. I apologize, but hopefully it was for good reason. Next week, Autumn is going to play a recording of this meeting. I don't know which one she'll pick, but I'm going to be in Cabo San Lucas next week. So we'll pick up with the live on March 13th, I think is the next. You're welcome, Helen. Nice to see your face. Everyone, have a great day. Thanks for hanging out with me.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.